Well, in this segment, we're going to talk about MINITAB 4. But first, again, I want to show you it's in the MINITAB assignment folder, so you click right onto the MINITAB assignment folder. And remember, in the MINITAB Command and Help, when you go in there, there's help for the different chapters. Now, MINITAB 4 mostly deals with Chapter 14, so the MINITAB Help you would go into would be... Now, for, like I said, MINITAB 4, it's mostly Chapter 14. So you're going to need to look at the commands for Z, 1Z, the significance test, and the confidence intervals. So right here we see the confidence interval commands and the significance test for a one sample Z test. Now, this is if we're given the statistics. What happens if you're given data? Because one of the problems is when you're given data that you're actually going to have to input into Blackboard, you would use these 1Z commands where you have your data in CY, whatever column that is. So that's how you would use, and you can see, here's the generic commands, and this is a specific example for you to look. As you'll notice, this is the first MINITAB where you don't have any data files, because the first couple of problems you won't need a data file, and the third one you're going to make your own MINITAB command. You're going to put it into the worksheet and work it. But look, first of all, make sure you put your name on your MINITAB, that you put Stat250 with 001 since you guys are my online section. And if somebody else is watching this, you make sure you put your correct section number. Then you put MINITAB 4 centered on there so that we know which MINITAB it is. Make sure you number and letter the answers accordingly and use complete and coherent sentences to all the answers that you give for the different questions asked. Make sure you staple your paper, but of course you guys won't because you give it email, but if you're in another section, you need to staple your paper and then hand it in at the start of the class. And for the online, you make sure you email it to statta1@gmu.edu. Now, as you can see, the first question deals with where they give you a sample, they give you the mean of that sample, and they give you the population standard deviation. They also tell you that the population is normally distributed. So we know that we can use a 1Z command on this. They're going to ask you in Part A to calculate a 95% confidence interval, a 90% confidence interval, and they're going to ask you two different questions. For question A4, you can use MINITAB to get that answer, to find that sample size. You do the let command, you let a constant equal, and then you just use the formula for sample size, or you can use your calculator, whatever. You just have to make sure that you say the sample size needed for 95% confidence interval, so if the margin is no more than 0.5 is, and give whatever you get. Make sure you answer those in complete sentences. As you can see, Part B is asking a hypothesis test, or a test of significance. The way you answer that is you answer 1 through 7 there underneath of there, and that will help you to answer all the questions that would pertain to the hypothesis test. And question 7 really doesn't pertain. This is just after you do number 6, state your conclusion in the context of the problem. So again, remember, answer each of those questions in complete sentences. So like number 1, you'd say, state the null hypothesis and alternative. You say, the null and alternative is, and then you write what it is. And I'll show you how to use Word to make it look very professional. Problem number 2 is where you're going to actually have to open up MINITAB and put that data in, 31, 31, 43, 36, and so forth. And then you're going to use the proper commands to find the 95% confidence interval, and then for you to do your hypothesis test. Again, make sure each of your answers is in complete sentence. And where they tell you to copy and paste the commands in MINITAB, you do that. Make sure you do that because that's part of the answer. Well, we're going to use the same problems that we worked on in the lectures to show you how to do your MINITAB 4. So here are the problems. Okay, so in this one, instead of the problem that you have in MINITAB, we're going to use this one, where we know the population standard deviation is 41, the sample mean was 172, and we had 14 cross-country runners, and we want to do a 90% confidence interval. How would we do that in MINITAB? So we'd use our MINITAB to help us. What you do is in the first line is you let it know that you're doing a 1 sample, and this is going to be a Z-test. In other words, we're going to give it a sigma. So we say 1Z. The next 2 things should be the sample size and the sample mean. So we say 14, because that's our sample size, with 172 is the sample mean for that. The sigma of 41, which was given to us, and the confidence level, a 90% confidence interval that we want. So we say confidence of a 90. When we hit enter, we'll get our confidence interval. And there we have it right there, 154 to 190.0. So be careful when you write this into your MINITAB. You would write your name, whatever it is. Then you'd say stat, stat 250 or section 001. I mean, this is MINITAB 4. And let's see, we want this one centered. So you go right up in here where you see centered, and you just center MINITAB 4. And now you can begin. You're in problem 1, cholesterol level of cross-country runners. In part A, in here, something like this. This is how you kind of mess around with it. In part A is your 90% confidence interval. So you would say the mean cholesterol level for cross-country runners, and you're going to write the confidence interval. So you could want to remember one of the interpretations could have been like this. The mean cholesterol level for cross-country runners is between 154 and 190 milligrams per deciliter, 90% confidence interval. The other one you could just have written, remember the mean cholesterol level for cross-country runners is between 154.0 to 190.0 milligrams per deciliter with a 90% confidence interval. Either one of those ways to interpret it would be correct. Now you have parts B and C. One you have to do a 99% or 95% confidence interval. So you'll give the interpretation for that, and then when asks you a question, how do you increase your precision or whatever, you answer that question. And then the last one is the sample size. So let's make one. We want to have our confidence interval to be between less than 5 milligrams per deciliter. So how would we do that? Well, you could do it on your calculator, or you could use MINITAB, and this is the command that you would use. Equation that you'd use to find the sample size. Your sample, the critical value for a 90 is 1.645. So I'm renegating it here. So now we want to have a margin of error within 5 milligrams per deciliter. Look at problem 1615. For the confidence level in 1613, they wanted 90% confidence interval. So that would be, remember what n is, it's your critical value times sigma over your margin of error squared. And the way we squared, we have a caret 2. Or you could have done a star and just copy that same thing in parentheses, either one. When I hit enter, I'm not going to see anything. I have to say print K1. So hit enter and then write print K1. So I go here, I hit enter. I won't see anything because I need to print it. So, whoops, I spell it right, print K1, and there we have the sample size. Now, you don't write 181, remember, because we have to go to the next greatest integer, so the sample size would be 182. So we'd go into our document, and we'd say for that one, the sample size for a 90% confidence interval to be within 5 milligrams per deciliter is 182. So that's, again, using a complete sentence and answering the question. We only want to see the MINITAB commands for this one. So what you would do is you'd come in here, you'd copy your MINITAB commands, and the results of your confidence interval thing, and you'd put that into your document. And I forgot to do that, so sorry about that. So you go in there, and you'd have to make sure that you put that in there so that they can see that. So you just get rid of it. So I'd go on and I'd format this nicely. Things, I like to put it kind of in the middle so you can move it over, however you guys like to do it. And I generally like to do the MINITAB commands in different colors, but you could keep it all in black. It's up to you. So in the next installment, we're going to go on and look at doing a hypothesis test.